Welcome back to Madam Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. Shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where we'll be relaxing as per usual. What was I going to say? I don't remember what I was going to say anymore. I don't know what I'm going to talk about today, necessarily. I will say Amazing Digital Circus episode 4 came out yesterday. Definitely one I was hotly anticipating because it's about my favourite character, Gangle. It did not disappoint. Definitely like a sort of different vibe compared to episode 3, which was also really good. But yeah, no, I don't know what else to say about it. It was well, hold on, I guess we'll get into it. Hello everyone, we're now in Fawnhallow. It's 5:42 p.m. on Sunday, December 15th, 2024. I'm not sure if I should talk about it too much yet because it literally just came out. Well, not just came out, it came out like 2 days ago or something. And because it's so widely available, I don't want to just like start spoiling it before people get a chance really to watch it. And I'm sure, basically I'm waiting for the end, obviously, the entire series. And then I'm going to have like a wrap-up sort of retrospective talking about all of them in general. I did very much like it though. It was interesting, like, you know, that Gooseworks, the person who makes the show, well, a director show, creator of a show? I'm not sure what the official title is, but very much someone who I think aligns with me on what I look for stories, which is basically like I care about characters more than lore, world building, etc, etc. You know, give me a plausible enough world which I understand the concept for, and then give me the character development. That's like, mwah, chef's kiss. And yeah, this episode was very, very interesting. It's sort of like a interesting sort of dive into, I'm not sure how to say, obviously about like mental health and all that, but I've had any good meals? Yeah, once in a while probably. That seems about right. But interestingly, I suppose there are some interesting choices within the episode, I think, which really sort of sell the idea. One major thing I noticed is the fact that a lot of the episode didn't have like background music in it, which made things feel very sort of like empty and hollow, almost like to a disconcerting state, not to like a creepy state, but just sort of like a hum, because the entire like episode takes place in like a fast food service industry sort of shift thing, and you know, obviously that is not always the most enjoyable thing to do. It's a very high pressure situation which doesn't get much thanks and rewards and gets a lot of customer complaints, like, and I mean, customers are like one of the most tedious things, shall we say, to deal with in like any sort of service, and especially in service industry, right? I say this, by the way, without speaking from experience. I've never worked like a fast food shift or anything like that before in my life, and you might be like, whoa, why is that? But it's actually it's not very interesting thing. I said I didn't do like a lot of part-time like work really when I was younger, or at least I didn't do like the standard things of like service stuff. Like things I would do would often be like academically related, like I'd run the club, or I'd help out with like tutoring things, but very little like actual paid labour, I would say. So definitely I speak from a position of privilege, and I don't want to sort of like conflate that with anything. I don't know what it is like working in the service industry, except I've heard like not great things. Would I've chosen to? I feel like looking back on it, I definitely should have. I mean, this is like diving deep, but certainly there was more like of a what's the word? More of a like a focus on academic results, I suppose. For me, compared to getting like these life skills of like working a job or something like that. Obviously, everything's worked out fine, but still, I do think that at least looking back in retrospect, I probably should have worked in like a service industry job, like a grocery store or any sort of store, at least for like a year or two part time. Doesn't really matter. I think it would have been good for me. 4 points of utility. This must be Apollo's. Apollo. I think it would have been a useful experience for me, but I didn't, and I'm not going to, I can't rewind time, and it doesn't really make sense for me to do so now, so, but it is an interesting look, I suppose, into it, about all the story that surrounds it. I guess we'll talk about fast food service or industry, anything like that, because I think it's a very common thing people say, is that it should be like basically mandatory for people to work in the service industry for like a year or two or something like that. And honestly, I'm basically for it. And I say this as someone who didn't do this, didn't work, this job or role or anything like that. Like I've done things like work that is, I would say, similar to service, maybe not similar to service industry, because again, I'm not doing it for a prolonged period of time. Things like I worked as like a server or whatever for like school events, etc., but it's not like my career was like on the line for it, or I was getting paid for it, anything like that. It was all like, I guess, unpaid labour, if I want to say, because we were all prefects, etc. So not to say that I don't have experience with doing that sort of thing. Was I very good at it? I wouldn't say I was like stand out amazing at it. I was definitively average at it, I would probably say. Would I be better now at it? Almost certainly. But that's probably no surprise, because this is comparing, me a decade ago to me now. But yeah, I don't know. It's I suppose it's interesting to see, because obviously I can't relate to the literal things which happen in the episode. These are things I just like hear about, like the sort of the shift manager who has this sort of like very go-get-em attitude, and like corporate happiness is perhaps how I'd put it. I'm trying to not give away too much about the episode, but I feel like that sort of stuff which is very evident from the trailer, or just from thumbnail art, to be honest. But how should I put this? There is some people who have a certain, honestly, disrespectful, I think, attitude towards those who work in the service industry. I mean, seeing them as sort of like very banal, low level jobs, which I think is honestly like thinking about the job I work now compared to the stress that they have in their job, I would almost certainly like choose the work I do now compared to the work they do, even if they were like similar in like wage. Not wage, but that's just the end of a sentence. I was going to say like wage payment, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. I felt like it had to be a phrase for some reason. Because dealing again with that sort of like high stress, high pressure, like it's a very high intense full on scenario, and it's often very underappreciated, and you have to deal with a lot of very angry customers, which I think is by far and away probably the worst part of it, I assume. Again, this is all guesstimations on me here. But I think seeing it as like, sure, do I know how to make a signpost? Seeing it with such like a patronising tone feels like, like it's underselling it a lot. I guess because I guess what I mean to say is like, do you need a degree to necessarily go into like a food service industry or something like that? No, that's like, I'm not here to argue necessary facts or something. Like, I'm not comparing it to the qualifications you need for a doctor and saying like they're the same or anything like that. But what I'm meaning to say is I feel like people have this sort of general patronising view looking down, because they sort of get the idea of like, yeah, I guess I can do that because the barrier to entry is low. And the barrier to entry is low than most other roles, but that doesn't mean that like everyone can just like do it or be happy doing it or want to do it. At the end of the day, I suppose, as a way that society runs at the moment, is we still need people to do these sort of roles and jobs, and I feel like by having such a patronising view on it, it's sort of just like, oh, why? If you unless you are someone who does not partake in any of these services that they provide, then I guess that's the only justification I think you could have for being like, oh, having a detached viewpoint of it. But like, if you ever go to McDonald's and like get the food, and you're just sorry, this is getting like far too heated for what I would normally do an Animal Crossing episode, but it's just like, why would you look so patronising and down on it? If you interface with the work they do, that service that you engage with is not possible unless they do their job. It's like, I don't know. I'm kind of making up a straw man here, because thankfully the most people I've spoken to in real life do not share this sort of sentiment. And I feel like nowadays, especially with younger generations, it's much more something that people see as like I don't see why I wouldn't treat a human being with respect compared to not doing so. It's in my opinion, I feel like if you came in with this sort of idea of being like, oh, you should go like flip burgers, that's all you're good for, people would be like, oh, that's a bit patronising, and people will rightfully, I suppose, sort of chastise you for that. Again, I'm not trying to make like false comparisons here of like saying, oh, like a brain surgeon has the same pressures as maybe someone working in like this fast food service industry, but I'm not. It's basically what I'm trying to say is like, why make it a competition in the first place? Why not just like, all these things have their different roles and pressures, and everyone behind it is a human being, and thus deserves a human being's like standard of living, right? Yeah. Sorry, this is like complete tangent. I suppose very thankfully, the people I know are not aggressive people in the sense that, you know, the stereotype of Karen, as they say, of like someone who creates a lot of uproar about something needlessly and very aggressively sort of reprimands people who make mistakes doing jobs and that sort of thing. There are definitely times you should stand up and be like, hey, this is not appropriate service, or something like that, depending on the situation. But I feel like at least the vibe that you're meant to get from when you call someone like in Karen, quote quote, in a derogatory, in the slang meaning of a term, which by the way I feel like we should definitely get a different term for it, because like I know some Karens, they're absolutely lovely, and I feel like it's a bit of a shame to have this sort of association with a name, but I suppose that's, you know, how linguistics works. But anyway, the point is that is the stereotype of this very angry, complaining, let me talk to your manager person, is someone who raises it under a pointless or trivial matter and no longer sees the person they're interacting with as human beings, I suppose, in that way, which is obviously rude. But yeah, the long and short of it was, could I work in the service industry? Yeah, probably. Would I enjoy it? Probably not. Would I want to? No, not really. Like, I don't doubt that I certainly could operate like a fryer ad or something like that. And if anything, I think logistically, the fact that it's like a lot of things running at once, organisationally plays well to my strengths. But it's also something which I don't want to do, which is fair, I feel like. And I respect the people who do have to do it for having to deal with so many like annoying customers. Like I feel like I often say that I'm very split between sort of millennial and Zoomer mindset, but like a very millennial thing to be like, damn, I don't want to like cause any inconvenience to the people who are working in the service industry. You know, would I raise a fuss if I don't get something or something is wrong? Actually, I don't think I normally do. If I get like wrong food, I'm just like, whatever. Like I just kind of wanted sustenance, unless it's something I literally can't eat, which is not like anything I can think of. Or if it's like incredibly wrong. I would probably say something if I was like missing food though. If I was like, hey, I don't have a burger in here, because I guess I want my burger. But I feel like it's a very sort of millennial attitude to sort of like minimize your presence, right? Probably to a too far degree, you know. I'd imagine if you're working with a food service industry, again, I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone. This is like, I'm sort of extrapolating from my own knowledge of my own experience of dealing with like customers, etc., and thinking what I would do. But like, if there's an error, I wouldn't mind you raising as an error or an issue. Just like do so politely, really. Basically, just treat people with kindness. And it's surprising. It's such a negative Animal Crossing episode. You know, we'll pivot off to this into something much more friendly, I think. Because I don't want to sit here complaining about, you know, the rotten apple which spoils a bunch, when we could be talking about the preservation of the good apples, who are worth talking about. This metaphor kind of fell apart. The long and short of it is, it portrayed a very sort of humdrum slice of life of working in the sort of food service industry. How accurate is it? I don't know. I assume reasonably accurate, but again, I've never worked in like a McDonald's or any of these sort of franchises, so I can't really say. But I don't know what I was going to say about it, to be honest. Yeah. Just the humdrum of sort of fast food life, which I feel like is a thing which gets, you know, covered surprisingly often in media, right? It almost feels like a rite of passage sort of thing to have something like that. I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing necessarily, I'm just saying, obviously people are drawing upon their own lived life experiences, which makes sense, to reflect upon that within the things that they would want to create, no? Yeah. I don't know. I guess if we're going to talk about hypotheticals now, what would I want to do if I worked in the fast food service industry? Like, what role would I take? Is it too obvious to say that I'd rather be like a shift manager or something? I don't know how necessarily good I would be at it, to be honest. Organizational skills, sure, but I'm sure there's more that goes into it than just organizational skills, right? I also don't really know what other roles really are in a sort of like food service industry. It's like, I assume you have someone okay, hold on, let's think. You probably have someone like manning the grills and fryers, probably someone cleaning up. Probably what else? that really is exposing my own ignorance for that sort of thing. Like, I'm trying to think of like what I would think of if I was like playing a game about the food service industry, which I feel like is probably the wrong way to think about it. But yeah, I don't really know, to be honest. Like, I feel like the shift management role, but obviously you can't just start out as a shift management role. That's not how it works. You've got to work your way up to it, right? By working in a company for a bit. So I don't know. Maybe you know what I think I would be good at? Probably at like assembly or something, putting everything together, and like keeping track of the orders, being like, okay, here are the orders running in. Let's do. I'm trying to think what I do on Overcooked. Most of the time I just kind of vibe, because I'm like, I'm not gonna like start talking. Like, well, okay, I say this a lot, but I'm like, I'm not gonna like play Overcooked and start being like, okay, unless we need to be like, here's what we're gonna do, you do this, you do this, you do this, and start going like all project manager or something on them. That seems unnecessary and not necessarily conducive to having a fun time. When you could just easily not do that and just sort of, you know, vibe out, have a fun time, embrace the chaos, because that's kind of like a big part of enjoyment of a game like Overcooked. Which in the same way, I guess, like, that'd be, I assume, what a shift manager does. I don't actually know what a shift manager does. So, again, exposing my ignorance. But I think I would be pretty good at assembly. I don't think I would want to, like, man the grills and the fries and that sort of thing. I assume how it actually happens is that everyone, like, does a little bit of everything, but everyone's got, like, a station which they're, like, supposedly in charge of, right? But if it's like, oh, we need more fries, like, we just got, like, a huge batch of order of fries, like, you go over and help the frying station out or something. But I think I would do pretty well in assembly and sort of tracking the orders as they sort of go out. Because that's kind of what I do in Overcooked when I'm playing like sort of soft organisational mode. Being like, hey, we need this, and then make the call outs. I don't know. Again, like, because I hadn't had this experience, I can't really say for certain. Is it something I should experience at some point? Yeah, but I don't really know how that would work at this point. Like, it's not like I'm just going to leave my job and be like, hey, I'm going to go work at McDonald's for like a little while or something. It feels like something which you would have to do, and then you would have to like make a documentary about it, and they'd be like, whoa, you know, online YouTuber faces harsh reality of actually working in the service industry. Or something like that, which is, I don't know, that feels like too clickbaity for me. I mean, while I am very much in this sort of camp of try everything, actually that would be a really fun thing to do, basically, like, do work internships for, like, every single job. And I do mean every job, service industry included. You know, see if I'm up to snuff. Could I hang in the industry, or would I crumble? I don't know. It'd be an interesting look, but again, now I'm saying about it, I feel like that this is like another sort of patronising look. I think I'm looking at my own prejudices here. I'm like, doesn't this feel patronising? In a way of how I'm judging this sort of industry, being like, oh, look, it's now entertainment, rather than someone's like livelihood or someone's like actual work life. And which I can only apologise, because I did not mean it that way, but I understand that intention is not the same as actual results. Anyway, long and short of it, fast food service industry. If you work in it, I salute you for being able to deal with it. And yeah, I don't even have fast food very often, so I don't know where this is coming from. But you know, you have my heart and my best well wishes. And I guess if you don't work in the service industry as well, unless you disrespect service industry workers, in which case you have my wishes for redemption. Anyway, on that note, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm going to round this episode off here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope we see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.